We're going to jump right into Rev Up Recruitment, Recruiter Pro Training. This section is going to be focused on one of our most important modules of Recruiter Pro Training, Module 5 of 6. It's Unit 5, Intentional Interviewing. It covers every basis of the candidate interaction, candidate engagement, really anything that touches the interaction with and the partnership with candidates. Okay, both live candidate interaction, and also candidates that have already maybe gone through the recruiting life cycle. This is me. Hi. Hair was much longer there. Started the firm back in 2020 with a dedication to empowering and growing talent acquisition from the inside out. We build high performance recruiting and hiring machines with your people through Recruiter Pro Training. Worked in the recruiting and staffing industry and capitalized off of companies a lot that really struggled with recruiting and talent acquisition. They would have needs, and we would come to the rescue with a lump sum fee sitting on their desk. And they would pay them reluctantly and wished that they had something sustainable that they could take home. This is my family, my lovely wife Paloma, my daughter Lucia. We're happily living in the Charlotte area, and this is what I do it for. So what we'll talk about first is the preface of this whole package of education and knowledge transfer that is Recruiter Pro. Recruiter Pro is about 5 really core competencies. It's focused on headhunter methodologies. Okay, and one of those modules within headhunter methodologies and mentalities is the 5 P's of recruitment, our proprietary philosophies that empowers companies with the strength, the capability, and the expertise to recruit like the best headhunters do. So number 1 is prioritization, making every job search, every recruiting campaign the most important thing of your day-to-day work, your week-to-week work, your monthly objectives. Many companies talk about how they prioritize talent, but then don't actually deliver. They put it to the side, they get to it when they get to it. Number 2, the 5 P's of recruitment is preparation. Jumping in and going in both feet forward into a recruiting campaign is great, but if you're not prepared, it doesn't matter. You're not going to get the same results. Willy-nilly, kind of shooting from the hip, you're going to find opportunities where you wish you were a little bit more prepared. You don't have all the right information. Proactivity. Waiting for talent is an old school philosophy. Now in 2025 is not the time to wait for talent. Talent does not wait. Top talent does not wait for you. If you want top talent, you have to be proactive in your approach to going out to the market. Number 4 is presence. And this is about focus. This is about listening. This is about paying attention and being intentional about the work that you're doing. Staying focused and staying in the moment, whether it be in an interview, whether it be in a discovery meeting or an intake session with a hiring manager. Having presence is critical to good recruiting. I promise you, the candidate will tell you everything you need to know, but it's your presence that makes a difference. And the last piece is practice. Practice makes perfect. You've heard the old adage, but in this instance, it truly does mean. A lot of times these are difficult conversations. We're going to focus on that today's workshop is having some really difficult conversations and having some challenging engagements with people that are more or less strangers. So the more you practice it, the more comfortable it'll be. Right? So start before we get into the bulk of the subject, which is the elephant in the room. Red flag awareness, having awareness to potential deal breakers, having awareness and uncovering potential things that could fall apart during the course of the recruiting life cycle. And so here are a few things that we look for in candidates to get a grip on whether or not we need to address them or how it could potentially impact our hiring results. Okay. Inconsistencies is number 1. Okay. Inconsistencies in attitude or behavior, inconsistencies in communication, inconsistencies in the professional's background, their resume, inconsistencies in what they say and what they do. Any form of negativity. This one can tend to be a little bit of a little bit uncertain because some folks say, hey, you can't say bad things about your previous employer. You can't say bad things about your previous boss. Well, if you do with merit, if you do it with constructive feedback, if you do it constructively, it's not always negative, but negative in attitude, negative posture, negative communication with you, the recruiter, negative mentality about the world around them. Preparation is key, obviously, as recruiters, but preparation for the candidate. This is a red flag that we need to look out for because how seriously are they taking you or your job or your company if they're not properly prepared? I'm not always going to ding somebody for not wearing the most professional imported Armani business suits, but not preparing for a meeting ahead of time just shows a lack of care and potentially low motivation. Communication, whether it be profanity, negative communication, poor response time, poor follow-up. When they say they're going to follow up, you give someone homework, they don't return the homework assignment on time, is poor communication and shows a red flag. Lack of flexibility we look for as well in evaluating candidate red flags, because if they're inflexible, maybe their expectations are unrealistic. Kind of goes hand in hand here. Inflexibility, not willing to go through the process, not willing to do what you said you're going to do, not willing to complete the assignment, complete the application, provide the resume. These are unrealistic expectations. Lack of judgment and overall lack of judgment is pretty much a red flag if they've made bad decisions in the past, if they made bad decisions on the jobs that they've gone after, bad decisions on the companies that they've evaluated. Short stays can sometimes be lumped in with poor judgment. All right, so first we have an exercise of red flags is picking out your own red flags that you see in candidates. What do you evaluate on a regular basis for red flags that possibly pop up that you can deal with? And maybe how you deal with them. What are red flags that you see on your regular basis? Okay, so here in the chat here is no follow-up. Absolutely. Same thing goes with the negative connotations with recruiters, is that they never follow up, right? That's what the general public says about recruiters. Oh, there's no follow-up. Okay. Well, that'll go along with the red flag of poor communication. If you ask for the candidate to follow up at a specific time, you confirm that, and they don't, that is a red flag. So then how might you address that? And we'll get to that in a second. So what else besides poor follow-up? What's another one? Body language. Yeah, good one. Eye contact, bad eye contact, or no body language, poor handshake. That's not always a reflection of behavior or a red flag to to whether they're going to be good at the job or not, or whether they're going to be a good retention or not. But it goes along with kind of poor communication or negativity. And then we'll get to that when you observe these things as a recruiter. We're going to talk about how to address those. Okay. So overall, this is the message to take home that red flags are generally always observed as a sign of lack of motivation. Okay. Either the person's not really truly interested, motivated in your job, or overall, they're just not really motivated to go back to work, period. They're not interested or motivated in the interview. They're not sold. They're not bought in. Guys, think about it like this. Whenever you do anything that means something to you in the world, whether it be a professional relationship, a romantic relationship, having a life partner, right? That's the ultimate sign of motivation, isn't it? When you get married, when you choose to buy a ring and commit to one individual for your whole life and walk down the aisle, that shows a lot of motivation, right? You got to jump through a lot of hoops. There's a lot of planning that goes in that. We use these same philosophies in Recruiter Pro training to evaluate candidate behavior. Okay, and here's some words to live by, and I challenge you to take away these three things as you're evaluating candidates going here after this workshop. Number one is to listen objectively. Okay, what you hear, internalize it. What you hear from the candidate, listen to the words. Okay, but don't make judgment. Okay. Again, having presence, one of the 5 P's of recruitment, having presence in these conversations will help you to determine what next steps to take throughout the course of the interview or the candidate relationship. Always observe any type of changes in volatility. Okay. Review and observe these things. Don't let them go by, right? Make mental notes, make specific notes, and we'll talk here shortly with addressing the elephant in the room of how to get those points across and feel a little bit better, but always observe the volatility. Okay. Don't let it slide by. And last but not least is to maintain neutrality. As a recruiter, we're the constant middleman, middlewoman. We are always in the middle between a candidate and a group of candidates and a hiring manager. Okay, so maintaining neutrality will help you to be better at evaluating red flags and making good quality hiring decisions. Here's a stat from Dr. Meebrains. That says the rule of elements of personal communication is only 7% in spoken word. Okay, only 7% of spoken word is personal communication. The biggest bulk of personal communication comes from body language, comes from voice, inflection, tonality. Okay, body language and posture accounts for more than half of all personal communication. So what does that mean? What does that mean with respect to recruitment? Internalize this. How can this make us and help us as recruiters be more engaged with our candidates? How can we assess red flags better? Well, to me, what I hear is that not everything that's said is potentially the red flag. There could be some things that are hidden far below, right? And it's our job as recruiters to dig into that. So you use your spidey sense, okay? The famous hero using the spidey sense can see and feel and evaluate things when danger is near or the bad guys around the corner, right? This is the spidey sense of awareness. So when you feel that some of those red flags are creeping up during the course of an interview or a candidate engagement somewhere along the recruiting life cycle, we encourage recruiters and HR professionals to use their spidey sense. So you see these changes, okay? The changes in posture or attitude, response time, the way they're communicating with you. They don't answer your calls, but they respond in email, okay? Now they're asking questions that are kind of off the wall or focusing on things like money too closely or the terms of the engagement too intently. If all of a sudden their interest or engagement changes during the course of your dialogues, this is when your sirens internally in your head should be ringing, okay? Spidey sense is an innate tool that every recruiter possesses in some fashion or another. And if you embrace the 5 P's of recruiting, number 5, practice, you will have more awareness and more visibility to this spidey sense, this sixth sense that all recruiting professionals have. So when you see these, call them out, okay? Call them out. Don't push them aside or else they may come back to haunt you. Remember, we're talking to strangers here, folks. Strangers, okay? It's like the first rule that parents teach their children is don't talk to strangers. Because if a child talks to a stranger, there's an opportunity that they could get hurt. There's an opportunity they could get taken. There's an opportunity that the child unknowingly could share sensitive information like that, parents aren't home or the door's unlocked in the back or something of that nature that could come back to hurt them. All right. So don't forget that we're dealing with strangers on a routine basis. We know that as recruiting professionals and HR professionals because, well, that's our job day in, day out. But on the other side of the coin, the candidates that are interviewing for your positions aren't as used to it or as accustomed to it as you are. Even the ones that are the most outgoing and communicative, they're not always going to be the ones that share information. They don't always share things that they need to or that they feel like they should. Okay. So we as recruiters have to pull it out of them. Okay. Pull these things out of the candidates that we need to know that could potentially jeopardize the deal. Number one is to confirm your senses. When you see some of these sirens or alerts that go off in your spidey sense, confirm them. Ask the questions, okay? Ask them questions to get to the root of it so that we just don't gloss over something that ends up causing the job to get turned down. Somebody asks about the travel involved with the job. You breeze over it saying, oh, it's only 25% of the year is travel, and you move on because you're trying to work your way through the course of the recruiting discussion. Well, they asked that question for a reason. So confirm your senses. Well, how does that sound? Well, what concerns do you have about travel? Nip it in the bud right then and there so that you can help to move on and something that doesn't come back to haunt you. Right? Here's some questions that you can use to confirm your senses. Then it gets to the second type of interaction that you might have with a candidate, where it comes time to address the elephant in the room. The flagship story here that we're talking about. Addressing the elephant in the room. So what does this phrase mean? It means, okay, just like this image shows, there's a giant elephant in the room. And imagine a room full of people and nobody's saying anything about it. Right? It's who's going to say something about the fact that there's an elephant in this room? Like, how incredible is that? Does nobody notice that? Is nobody going to say anything about it? Our job as recruiters is to call these things out so that we can move through the recruiting life cycle more effectively. And we don't let these hurdles knock us down in the future or preclude them from an interview or cause them to turn down an offer when it gets to it. So we need to address the elephant in the room. This can be a difficult topic. It can be a really tricky thing because sometimes it's a little bit uncomfortable. It can be a little bit uncomfortable. What are some things that, whether they're red flags or they're causes for concern, that we may need to address during the course of the recruiting life cycle? Give us an example of that. Short stays. Okay, I see short stays. Sure. How might you address that? Maybe too long to type, but how might you address that? Hey, I can't help but. Internalize this phrase. I can't help but to notice. I can't help but to think. I can't help but to feel. I can't help but to question. I can't help but to have concerns about. I can't help but to worry about. Okay? Using these terms is a way to call something to attention, raise it up for discussion, without there being adversarial or combative tone to the phrase. Just think of it like this. You notice somebody's accent. You notice somebody talking, they sound like they're from another country. You don't just say, where are you from? It might be a little bit intrusive. It might be a little bit, actually a little bit insulting. Okay? Hey, I noticed your accent. I can't help but to notice your accent. Where are you from? Where are you from? Hey, I can't help but to notice some of the gaps on your resume. Help me understand those. Hey, I can't help but to think that you didn't call me back for a couple of days, so maybe you're not as motivated as we originally talked about. Hey, I can't help but to notice that maybe your posture has changed a little bit. Is there something wrong? Hey, I can't help but to have concerns about your availability to interview. Help me understand where all the busy periods in your schedule are coming from. Hey, I can't help but to feel like this conversation isn't going the way that we thought it was going to go. How to help me to get back on track? Help me get back on track here. I want to build a good relationship with you. I remember a woman, we'll call her Kathy, who I did an in-person interview with, and we were evaluating this person. It was back in the agency headhunter days, and she sat down in my office, and I just couldn't help noticing that just this negative posture, short answers, very quick, bad facial expressions, just seemed grumpy, seemed in a bad mood, seemed like I, kicked her dog or something, and I got about 5 minutes through the interview until I really had to stop, and I said, look, Kathy, I can't help but to feel like there's some kind of block here. There's some kind of wall here. Am I overthinking this or something? What can I do to make this conversation more productive? What can I do to make, change the posture of this? And when I asked that question, Kathy opened up and she said, "Look, I've just had some really bad experiences with recruiters in the past. They've promised the world to me and not delivered. They've set improper expectations and not delivered. And it rubbed me the wrong way. It gave a bad taste in my mouth, and something to the effect that, I'm just kind of negative on recruiters these days." From that moment forward, when we were able to address her concerns, the energy completely changed, the posture of the meeting, the dialogue completely changed. Because we addressed that elephant that it was in the room of her posture, her attitude, her perceived negative feelings towards recruiters in general. By addressing that, it enabled us to move past and get more constructive conversations. So, folks, it may feel a little bit uncomfortable when you address the elephant in the room, okay? It may feel uncomfortable. It may feel awkward. It usually is, okay? Recruiters need to take the high road. Okay, so I challenge you all in this exercise to take the high road, to find opportunities where you can be the bigger person in an effort of a long-term goal of solving the problem, solving your hiring manager's problem, solving your departmental problem, solving the gaps that lie in your team. Okay, so I encourage you to use some of those languages when you feel your spidey senses ringing. Get past some of those things. Folks, we're about out of time here, but the thing to remember with red flags is if something smells fishy, it's probably a fish. So it is better for you as a recruiter, as an HR professional, to dig in and get underneath what the root of the problem is. That way you can work through it together, build that relationship and rapport, and effectively move forward in the recruiting life cycle. Of course, any questions, feel free to send me a message, throw them in the chat line. I hope this was helpful to you all, and I look forward to working with you. And as always, happy hunting. Cheers.